Hey guys, so today we're going to be looking at some GraphQL stuff. Uh, I'm just going to jump right into it. So what I wanted to implement is kind of this code generator that makes it easier to use with TypeScript on the front end when you're utilizing GraphQL. We don't have to worry about manually typing out all the queries and the different components that go into using GraphQL on the front end. So this makes it a lot easier when you're working with it. And I have I already set up a PR that did the general code generation, which creates this file, and it outputs all these different types that are make it easier to use on TypeScript. You can see there's a lot of stuff in here, and essentially what it's doing is taking all these queries. We have these different queries set up. Each has their own file, and it'll take these and kind of parse it out and give it its own TypeScript types. I'm just going to modify these here, make it a little bit better formatting because I'm OCD and picky. But yeah, these are all the queries we have right now. And as we add new ones, we'll just regenerate this file, giving us more types. So it's typing out these queries. It's also typing out the general schema, the GraphQL schema. I'm not going to go into the details of GraphQL, what it is. I just started working with it anyway, so I'm still a beginner. But you can look into it and get an idea of what's going on and how it works. And these are resolvers. So there's types for resolvers as well. We haven't, or I haven't implemented any just yet. But if we go into the type generated file, which is, I lost it, 1 second. In this index file, this is the generated one. And we look for resolver. There's going to be resolver types as well, which allow us to type out resolvers, which will be really nice down the road. Right now, they're not being typed and it's just returning whatever. So if there is a type error in here that's not caught at compile time, it'll cause a runtime error through GraphQL because you're not returning the proper types. So that's where this comes into play. It makes it easier to catch those errors and those little bugs at compile time. So today I'll just be looking at let's do a so I did this one. This is using the custom types. This is a custom HOC, higher order component, with React Apollo, and it allows you to wrap these components and give it these data queries. So this corresponds with the get app query. So if we look back into our GraphQL file, you have the get app. So here's the get app query. And whenever I generated it, whenever I ran the generation for CodeGen, it gave me this with gen or with get app, and also this get app props, which is going to be given to the component itself to tell you what's available, and it makes it easier to work with on the front end. So I have an issue open. Let's open it up here. That kind of goes into detail what I wanted to do, and essentially I want to replace this manual or custom HOC that I created beforehand with the new ones that are being generated, just because they're cleaner and they're typed correctly. Well, you can see we have one here in the curriculum page. We have one here in this lesson page, review lessons, and so on. I think I did this guy already. Actually, no, I didn't. Let's go do this one. This will be what we do today. So the goal is to replace it with Query Loader with the get app, the custom HOC. So first I'm just going to start this up, starting up the server. I'll open a new one. Another thing, when you're doing the generation, the code generation, which is run with this script, you need to have the server running, which starts up this endpoint here. And that's how the generator grabs figures out what schema you're working with. So if I kill the server and try and generate, it'll give me an error saying that the schema is not available. So just keep that in mind. If you are trying to regenerate or generate new types, you need the server running. So we'll start it up. And at this point, I'm not making any new types. I'm just utilizing the types that were generated previously. So I won't need to rerun this today. But just for future reference, if you need to run, you'll run the generate whenever you add something inside this folder. Whenever you add a query, you'll need to generate. Whenever you modify this type def, you'll need to generate. All right, so we're going to modify app nav, and it looks like I was already starting on it before this. Let me clear it out, and we'll go over it step by step to see how it's done. Make sure I have. That looks like just those other ones were me formatting. I'm just going to reset this one. Okay. So right now it's using this with query loader, which at the end, when we eventually utilize all the generated types, this will go away completely. We won't need this with query loader anymore. Before I had, so it comes with, the generator comes with a lot of things. One of them is that with get app, and the other custom HOC ones. It also comes with custom hooks. So here's a use case where we're using the use logout mutation, which is coming from that generated folder or file. But we're still using that. These guys, we want to get rid of them. So they're going to just go away. And so it's just the get app. All we need here is with get app. And we also need the props. Before it was coming from this query data props, which was kind of bizarre to use. Now we have a custom, I believe it's app, yeah, get app props. So it's the query name and then props. And the same, they all follow this kind of pattern. The way they're generated is HOCs will start with, and then they'll get camel cased. We'll just full on camel case the rest of the query name, get app, and then for this one it follows convention where you have just the name and then props at the end. So we need the with get app and the get app props. Get app props is going to be passed to the component itself to tell you what's coming back. So we just put it in here, and this will be replaced completely. And so now I have to work with data and children. Children's just the default React, what's coming from React if this is past children. Data is coming from the HOC that we're going to give it. So inside data, we have these guys. So you can see with session, lessons, error, alerts. All these are specifically related to this query itself, the get app query. So you can see here it's bringing back lessons, session, and alerts, right? So in this component, all it's concerned with is session. And I can see that here because it was previously grabbing session from query data. So that'll go away. And I'm just getting it straight from, I'm just destructuring it right here. And before I move further, I'll go ahead and do this. So we won't be using this anymore, right? We're going to use the custom with get app. And the way it works is you call it once and you can pass it. So I haven't tested exactly what can go in here, but I believe it's something along the lines of if your query has variables, if you want to pass variables to the query, you can pass them in this way. There's no variables in this query itself, it's just by itself. So then I call it again, and I pass it the component that it's going to wrap. Now one thing I want to show you, so if I get rid of this get app props here, I'm going to get type errors down here. And there should also be a type error here because it needs to match. This component needs to know about what's coming back, what is with get giving it at compile time, and that's where the get props comes in. So then we have if not session, because session is an optional, it can be undefined. We want to make sure that session is defined, and then we want to get the username from it. So this is the reason it's getting an error here is because user is not always defined. So I'm trying to destructure something that's possibly could fail at runtime. So the previous way we did this could have been an error in certain cases. Now that we have compile time checks, we know this is not valid because user could be undefined at the time that it is called. And what we need to do, I think I'm just going to go like this and go all in one. Given TypeScript and the newest ES6, or I don't know which version it is, but optionals are available with this question mark, which makes it a lot better, a lot easier to work with. So we have the optional, it'll give us the username. We still have a type error because it could potentially be passing in undefined if this is not defined right. All we have to do to fix that is just give it an OR statement. There's probably better ways to do this, but this is good for now. So I'm going to leave it as that. And I want to go ahead and test it. So you can see we got rid of all this stuff. All that was gone away and replaced with our custom generated types. And that's inside of app.nav. So I'll pull up the server, make sure everything's running properly, no errors. The app.nav is being called on every page, pretty much. It's this top bar here. And that specific code, this one right here, is this area. I don't think y'all can see the browser that well from this view. Oh, you can't see it at all. Oh no, yeah you can. Whenever I move over, y'all can see it. Okay, cool. Yeah, so it's this area here. That's what the code that I was changing. And as you can see, there's no errors. If I navigate around, everything's still working. So it looks to be good. I have a little bug here we need to look into eventually. But yeah, I think that should be good for this one. This is just a high-level overview of how we can start working on this issue and replacing these older HOC components with the new custom generated ones, which will make life easier down the road, hopefully. The main point is getting everyone familiar with how to work with them and how to use them, and it should be a lot less painful than before. Having to worry about all these different things. Now everything's given to you pretty much. The hardest part is understanding what this is doing for you and like the different ways you can use it. I still don't know all the ways I can use it, but at the very basic way is like this, right? You just pass it, you call it with nothing, and then you wrap your component. And you need to make sure your component that's being wrapped has the same types that this is expecting, which in this case is get props. All right, let's go ahead. I'm gonna make a PR out of this, a pull request PR, and just little by little check off these boxes and replace and refactor those bits of code that we were looking at. Let's say app.nav types. This is just a new branch I'm setting up. Add all my files, commit them. I might get some errors here, but that's okay. Let's see, let's give it a message. Update or refactor old HOC component with new type gen. Generated types. refactor old HOC with new type. It's a little redundant. New GraphQL generate types. Yeah, that's good. And I'll be doing some more videos on these so you'll get more familiar with how it works and get to see other use cases and how to use it. Yeah, so here's an error. It's just a linting error. I always forget to run this. Just need to fix that real quick. All right, let's rerun. Need to add them back. Since linting it will literally change the files. Recommit. And then I'll be able to so we have this guy. Oh yeah, and this. Actually wasn't expecting this here. So let's see what's going on. It looks like, so these are snapshots. And some of our test suites we're using snapshots to compare what's being rendered. And it's all relevant to the, I know why. So in our old with query loader, we kind of wrapped up, we took care of the loading state by default, which was nice because you didn't have to worry about it when in most cases you're gonna have the same thing happen in the loading state, but it also takes away the flexibility of like, well, what if in this scenario I don't want it to load this certain thing during the loading state? Anyway, so the new one doesn't take care of that by default. We have to tell it to take care of it, and to do that, we'll look at this loading, and essentially in the component, we'll check if it's loading and tell it what to do. And before I go into that, I want to go back to the old one and just kind of show you what I mean. So this is the old with query loader, and you can see it's just using that query, and it handles the loading state automatically for you within the HOC, and it just returns this spinner. The new way we'll do it, we won't let the HOCs handle that. It's going to be more up to the component what to do, because that makes more sense. You don't want to always load the loading spinner. Especially when this loading spinner is that big. It's this thing right here, right? So you don't always want to take up the whole page during loading state. So we're in app nav. It should actually be in the same folder, loading spinner, yeah. So we're just handling this loading state. And you can see this loading variable is coming from the HOC. It's passed down into the app nav, and it comes from the props. So if loading, we just want to return loading spinner. I think that's what the complaint is. Let's just run the test manually here to ideally you want to have a case that checks for all of them. See, in this area we're not checking for an error case, which we probably should. We'll eventually do it. So now we're getting missing code coverage on line 20. I'm assuming because of this weird thing that I did there. So we'll have to fix that. Let's just, I might just use Lodash's Git to handle this. Hopefully it handles it. Ooh, I'm not too sure. I'm not exactly sure why it's saying line 20 is not covered. Let's see. Oh, let me set equal. Yeah, so this is pretty much exactly the same thing as this line here. It's just saying we want to get from the session object, drill down to user.username. And if it's not, if there's an error in here or something, it's going to return an empty string. This is kind of like your default value if this part is not available. So we'll set that up as a const and just pass it in. Hopefully that gets rid of that. I don't want to get the cool thing about types is whenever I type session here, I get autocomplete and it shows me what's available, right? Whereas if I do it this way, I'm still kind of guessing here, right? I'm not utilizing that type system. But let's see if we can figure this out. Maybe it just was complaining because I passed it in all at once. Maybe if I set up as a variable to begin with, it won't complain. Let's try this again. This is the same exact line that I passed down here, but now I'm assigning it to a variable. See if that helps. These are pretty popular in more modern languages. Look at that. Okay, we have, oh no, no. Still getting that line not being covered. I guess since it's an optional chain, I don't know. I'm trying to think what else I can do here to cover that. That's kind of tricky. Maybe if yeah, but then if I remove the optional, it gives me an error because this might not be defined, right? So another way to get around it, but I'll still probably get the uncovered line check, is just check for every single object down the line that I know may or may not exist, right? So in here, and maybe I can set up that conditional and have these variables outside and have like a let for username, and because I'm going to reassign it if there is a username, and by default it'll be empty. And if I know this exists, then I know that I can grab it dot username. All right. Well, it should just be string. See, I haven't played around enough with TypeScript to figure these little nuances out here. I think for now I'm gonna just leave it as using this guy, just because we have that. We're using this in other areas of the code base already, so it's not a big deal. But maybe make a note of it. To do replace with typing, right? Because that's the whole goal, kind of, is get typing integrated into all this. That way we're not, I mean, this is almost like a guess, right? I could accidentally type username here and never know. I'd probably figure it out, right? But with typing in place, it'd be a lot easier and quicker to figure out that something there is wrong. Yeah, so let's leave it like this. I'm going to bring these variables back down below this condition because there's a return up here. That way these aren't even run beforehand in a way. something I'm not sure what this is all about. I've seen it a couple times. Definitely gonna dig into it and see what's going on there. It looks like an unhandled promise in one of the test cases. I'm not sure why it's saying it's all passed though. I would think if this error is showing up, we'd have failing somewhere. So it could be just a weird test bug. I don't know. All right, let's add that all back in. Recommit or finally commit. Ah, freaking lint. So bad about that. Okay. And a nice thing about doing these in small bite-sized PRs is we can reference them later within our documentation, and can also reference this video and help other developers out. It'd be a good experience for everybody. And by the way, I'm no expert on this stuff. I'm just learning it as y'all are going along, just trying to teach what I have learned so far. So don't take what I mean as the end all be all. I could be wrong. So I'm gonna push it up to origin, and this will send up the PR. And then I'll come back here and wait for it to come in. Okay, there we go. So as I said before, I want to reference this issue that I'm working on. So issue 291. Just put works on 291. One thing to note, you don't, in some PRs you'll put like closes, you know, some issue. If you do that, it'll literally close that issue out automatically when this PR is merged. So I want to make sure I don't put closes here. I want to put works on. That way it doesn't close out that issue. It works on 291, and give a little bit of details. I always kind of tag it GraphQL types and refactor app nav HOC. We'll call it get app HOC. I don't think there's anything really to state in here. I'm just going to leave it as this. I can always come back and update this description. As you can see, it's a very small, clean PR. We removed more stuff than we added, which is a good refactor in my opinion. Right? You want to reduce the amount of code and make it more readable and maintainable. So I like this. I'm happy. And then to finish it off, I'll just copy it and let everybody know. New PR, so they can take a look at it. I think that's it for now. I eventually want to keep streaming more and more daily, getting myself more comfortable doing this. and getting more information out there for you guys, for everybody to be able to work on the code base and become familiar and hopefully learn a thing or two, right? So until next time, guys, thanks.